imagine standing in the grocery store in the checkout line and someone comes up to you and taps you on the shoulder and asks, "Can I trust you?" Would you feel uncomfortable? Maybe a little bit awkward? My guess is that most of us would, but subconsciously, we're all asking ourselves this question in every interaction that we have with each other, in person and online. Can I trust you? Another way to say it would be, are you safe to trust? Trust is the glue that holds our society together, yet many of us have lived through situations that make trusting other people and organizations really difficult. We've believed in someone and they let us down. We put our hope in a boss, a pastor, a president to change things, and nothing changed. We've trusted that we have more time with someone and they unexpectedly passed away. We've watched people say one thing and do another time and time again. So, of course, it doesn't feel safe to trust when life has shown you that it's not. Now think about the mass quantities of information that we're exposed to every day that shape our beliefs and behaviors. It's actually the equivalent of watching 16 movies a day every single day. And so much of what we read and hear is inaccurate that many are calling this the age of misinformation. For example, one study found out of 1,500 tweets during the pandemic, more than 1,200 of them contained false information. So now we're asking ourselves, can I trust what I read and hear? So on one hand, we're not sure if we can trust the people around us. And on the other hand, we're not sure if we can trust the information that's being given to us. And all of this questioning weaves together to create an undercurrent that subtly influences the way we live our lives. Guarded, hesitant, unsure. And it's these characteristics that keep us from one of our greatest human needs, to be accepted and connected. So whether it's with our teams that we lead, or our students, our families, or even ourselves, trust is fundamental to healthy relationships, efficient workplaces, and well-functioning societies. What I'd like to talk about in our time together is the shift from distrust to trust, and what's possible when we get intentional about something as simple as trust within ourselves and others. First, let's talk about distrust within others. For example, I've had a sordid history with trust myself. I remember spending hours and hours on the phone with my friend trying to help her understand our math homework. The next week, we're back on the phone, but this time, we're excited, talking about what our 6 friends would wear tomorrow to match at school. I'm rifling through my closet, naming off every piece of clothing I owned, and we finally found something we all had. So I show up the next morning, head held high, bright smile, excited to be wearing my baggy white Adidas t-shirt, my denim Tommy Hilfiger overalls, and my sneakers. I was super cute. I rushed down the 4th grade hallway, ready to have our shining moment, to find them all matching, only they were wearing something else. They had decided late last night to change the plan, but they didn't let me know. They walked around all day having the best time, matching each other, and I came home devastated. I never wanted to see that outfit again. I remember December 23rd, 2008, the day that would change everything. Up until this point, you could have made a movie about my family's story. Camping, boating, tree forts, year-round sports, hot chocolate after sledding in our front yard, and a sweet family dog. Then one day, I was home on break from college, and my mom sat me down in my bedroom to let me know she wasn't coming to Christmas. They were separating, and the movie was over. The most reliable thing I had in my life, my family foundation, it was gone in a moment. The ways my trust was broken goes on and on. A boss who didn't follow through, being stood up on dates, being lied to, stolen from, and cheated on. Maybe you have your own painful history with trust. You know, it's not even something we think about a lot, but we can definitely feel it the moment it's gone. I share these stories with you so that as you reflect on your own stories of broken trust in the many contexts of your life, you can feel the weight and influence that trust has. So that maybe, as I begin to share solutions with you, you can see the value in repairing it. Because if the negative consequences were this heavy, maybe the rewards will be even greater when it's restored in your life, career, your community, and beyond. Now let's talk about distrust within ourselves. I know I can certainly turn the mirror around and see my own stories of being someone who said one thing and did another, just like what I had experienced. I remember buying a gas station coffee and throwing the cup away before I got home because I didn't want my husband to know I had overspent on our Dave Ramsey budget. Listen, sneaking gas station coffee is a pretty low point. Or chronically hitting the snooze button multiple times every morning, or setting an intention early in my business. I quit like within a month. Or maybe you're like me and you've picked up the phone when your ex called and you let them back into your life, even though you said the last time was the last time. Or you sat through work meetings shaking your head yes, but internally completely disagreed, but you never spoke up or followed through with your yes. Maybe you've quit a run before you hit your goal, or ate more sweets when you said you were done, or added some things to your expense report that probably shouldn't have been on the company credit card. My point is, if we look closely, we can all find something that would not get us the trustworthy award. So whether you went first and broke your own trust, or someone else broke your trust and shook your foundation, the most important thing to recognize is the interconnectedness between our ability to trust others and our self-trust. In other words, there's a dynamic and important connection between inner and external trust. In fact, researchers have been studying this relationship between the two for years. Carl Jung on projection, Charles Cooley in the looking glass self, Nathaniel Branden in the self-esteem theory. Essentially, they're all saying your relationship between, or your perception of yourself influences the way that you see others, and vice versa. Now, earlier I mentioned the shift from distrust to trust. To be able to make this shift, we have to understand how that relationship between self-trust and trusting others, it can actually give us really practical tools that can help us make that shift. Next, I want to walk you through two cycles, the cycle of distrust and the cycle of trust, and show you how these two cycles can help us rebuild trust, create meaningful relationships, and find that acceptance and connection that I really know we all want. First, the cycle of distrust. The cycle starts with this idea of who we are. Most of us want to believe we are good, honest, healthy, or maybe being caring and motivated is really important to you. Then you make an incongruent decision that's out of alignment with that idea. Some of the ways we do this are by self-abandonment, which can look like, let's say you hate something but someone else loves it. And so you say, oh, you like it? Yeah, I like that too. And that starts early in childhood. Or not speaking up when we know we have something to say. Or not living in alignment with our values. We could call that living inauthentically. Incongruence can also look like not honoring our internal commitments. This sounds like, okay, just one more time, or okay, just 5 more minutes. Lastly, we may be dissociating. When we disconnect from how we really feel, it's difficult to make congruent decisions. So we have an idea, we make an incongruent decision, and then we have a negative emotional reaction. Oftentimes in this cycle, we don't want to look at or deal with that negative feeling, so we perpetuate the cycle with another incongruent decision. And the cycle continues, and self-trust is nowhere to be found. It's this exact cycle that led me to being overweight, burned out, I was having heart palpitations, my marriage was a mess, and my business was on the brink of failure at the end of 2021. Enough was enough. I had to take a really hard look in the mirror. I decided in that season to hold myself to the person I wanted to be. I picked up a self-help book. I prayed more. I started making small commitments and keeping them like a glass of water every morning before anything else. I went to the gym when I said I would. I said no when I meant no. I stopped all that negotiating with myself. I spoke up for my dreams, and I began to live authentically. That's how we break the cycle and create a new cycle of trust. Remember, we have this idea of who we are. We are good, we are honest, we are healthy, we are caring and motivated. And then we make a promise to ourselves that is in alignment with that idea. And we keep that promise through our actions, regardless of other people or external circumstances. And inner trust is built and the cycle deepens. So essentially, in the same way that trust was eroded is the same way we can rebuild it, starting today. Get that idea of who you are at the forefront of your mind and continue making decisions and acting in alignment with that idea. Start small, but stay committed. Bank those wins and watch as your self-trust strengthens and you build a whole new world around you. Now, how does this help us with other people? Well, what's fascinating is that in doing the work to trust yourself again, you're actually creating a trust feedback loop. So when you interact with other people, it's with a bias of trust because you've built it internally first. So because I know I'm a trustworthy person, my natural idea of other people is that they are worthy of my trust. So I make my decisions accordingly. And it's my trust in them that influences their actions, and the cycle continues and deeper trust is built over time. What could happen if we lived a life of reciprocal trust, building on the benefits of trusting yourself and others every day? Maybe at work, we could have a few less of those meetings after the meetings because there was enough trust in the boardroom to authentically share what was on your mind and trust your team with your honesty. Maybe in your family, you'll go first and you'll lean in to some of those difficult but really important conversations. With your neighbors, your community, or your leaders, how could your life look different and better if you got to experience deep connection with them because of reciprocal trust? I'd like to leave you with this story. In the bloody trenches of World War I, soldiers on both sides were entrenched in a brutal, seemingly endless conflict. The landscape was covered with craters, and the air was thick with the sounds of artillery and gunfire. And then on Christmas Eve of 1914, something extraordinary happened. A German soldier, standing in the mud and the cold, suddenly raised his hand with a white flag, a sign of truce. At first, the British soldiers weren't sure if they could trust him. They were hesitant. Was this a trap from the enemy? But something in the soldier's gesture, his vulnerability, spoke louder than the war. A British soldier took a risk and stepped forward, and slowly soldiers from both sides started to emerge from their trenches. What came next was a miracle. They exchanged gifts, chocolates, tobacco, buttons, pictures of loved ones. They even sang carols and played football together. For one brief, shining moment, the war was paused. The soldiers didn't trust their superiors or their generals, but they trusted each other. They recognized their shared humanity in the midst of the violence. That simple act of trust, one soldier reaching out to the other, temporarily bridged the divide, showing that even in the worst of times, the decision to trust can create moments of connection. I think we all know trust is really important in our lives. But when we've been hurt and let down and lied to, it's really hard not to keep your guards up. I know for me in my life, I've had a really hard time trusting other people. I would feel threatened if somebody tried to rush my process or make me put my faith back in someone before I was ready. But through coaches and counselors and mentors and friends in a marriage that I was committed to making work, I started to see that that wall that I had built for myself actually was keeping them out and keeping me in. So I did the hard work to get out. I actually hated it when I started to see how many of my issues came from my own trust. But I kept going. I decided I would hold myself to the person I wanted to be. And over time, I became someone I could depend on. I opened up my heart and I trusted my husband more deeply. I let my children in closer to see all my flaws. I led my clients in a new, more vulnerable way. And I put myself out there and I found mentors and I made new friends. My life is drastically different today because of my ability to trust myself and others. What could your life look like if you got intentional about trust? How much more impact could you make if you could trust yourself to finish everything you started? What would you feel like if your family was known for honoring their commitments? If your church, your school, your leaders had deep trust with the people who really need them most? And what could society look like if we all decided to hold ourselves to the people we want to be? So that if for some strange reason someone comes up to you at the grocery store and says, "Can I trust you?" the answer would undoubtedly be, yes. Thank you.